People from the city used to come out, and there were parts of the grounds where they were welcome. Yeah, that shows a reflection of this bottom one, but this is the same place where that was taken. A lot of changes over the years. It burned inside, and you see they're quoting Sue Foster. She was the director by then. They know it was at the ridges somewhere. time he had a room someplace else. Written by Catherine Ziff and published in 2012. The Asylum, begun in 1867. It really has these wonderful grounds, sort of destroyed by the changing of the Hocking River bed. The grounds were originally designed by a student of the famous architectural landscaping man who did Central Park in New York.
Olmsted.
This is Lois Whaley for Women Today and Yesterday. I recently did a program with Sally Delgado, the educational curator, here at the Ridges Kennedy Museum. We're following up now with seeing some more of the Ridges. In the Ohio University Post, there was this issue that had an article about a woman with multiple personalities. And a lot of the issue had to do with one of the people who was at the Southeast Ohio Mental Health Center in the late 1970s, a man named Billy Milligan, who had multiple personalities and who only passed away last winter. That brought up this whole idea of the Ridges and the fact that the Ridges was originally the Southeast Ohio Mental Health Center. I'm wearing the t-shirt. It shows the building. They have another variety which is in white. I got one of the black ones because it was big enough. They had someone who spoke with people on the street, which is frequently done. What do you know about the Ridges? So it's rather interesting, the answers that they got. Here's one. I worked there, so I know a bit. It was an insane asylum until sometime in the 80s. They have since converted it into academic buildings, though most of it is still left unrenovated. That's true. Next door to this big building, which is the original insane asylum that was built beginning in 1867, there is the Voinovich School for Leadership in one of the former cottages that was used later in the time when they had gone from having a big institutional building to smaller cottages for some of the patients. Well, here's another person. Kind of a thing that is often talked about on campus. Kind of has this like reputation for being a haunted, eerie type thing. And a lot of times people want to go and explore it. I've done a class where we got to hike up around that area. The architecture is cool, and the land around there is really neat too. Now, neither one of these people mentions the feature that we're going to talk most about and have pictures about, and that is the Kennedy Museum of Art. Edwin L. Kennedy and his wife, Ruth, also were both graduates of Ohio University almost 90 years ago. Edmund Kennedy became a well-to-do person on Wall Street, although he had started out in a farm in Ohio, very poor. In fact, their house burned down accidentally in the late 1920s and had to be rebuilt. But by that time he was going to college because he knew that education was the thing that would save him from a life of toil on those old-time farms where, you know, you had to spend several days doing haying by hand with pitchforks and so on. He had ties with the American Southwest. Over the years, he accumulated a great collection, hundreds of Navajo rugs, and they are still in contact with some of the Navajo women weavers. And he also had some tremendous turquoise and silver jewelry, pieces of turquoise the size of eggs. The Kennedys had this idea. They should spend their money while they're still alive on things that help other people. And that's why the Kennedy Lecture Series has been going for probably 60 years now, because it was going when we first came 50 years ago. Not only Ohio University, but other educational institutions have benefited from the Edwin L. Kennedy and Ruth Zimmerman Kennedy belief that it was very important to use your money in ways that would help people. The biography of Edwin L. Kennedy, written by the grandson in the 1990s. Kennedy was associated with Lehman Brothers, which had some problems later on, but that was after his time. But he did live to be a very elderly gentleman in his 90s, and he was born in 1904, so you know that's a very long time ago. The original core of the museum was their donation, mostly of Navajo jewelry and rugs. But now they have many other things than we're going to be seeing. Back to the ridges. Let me read you what a couple of other people had to say. What do you know about the ridges? None at all. I've been up there, but I don't know the true history behind it all. And then here's one who says, not much, just that it's like haunted. There's a graveyard. Well, it's true, there is a graveyard on the ridges, and it is the final resting place for a number of the inmates who did not have a place to be buried. This past spring, my family remembered a distant relative who died in an insane asylum in California and was buried there, and like many of the people originally in the graveyard here at the ridges, there was no stone for him. But he was a Civil War veteran who had served for 3 years, probably suffered from what today we call PTSD. The federal government still provides gravestones for people from the Civil War. A cousin of mine and I arranged to have a stone placed on this uncle of my grandfather out in California. And it was turned into really quite an event because the mayor came, and 50 people were there, and my grandson was there, and 4 of my cousins. He died in 1880 and had never had a stone. The VFW came, fired guns, the sons of the Civil War veterans came, and they were the ones who helped us get this all set up. I mention this because that is just to amplify on the fact that the graveyard here at the Ridges is for the insane asylum, and for many years there were a number of graves that were not marked, but Tom Walker has taken it upon himself to help identify and mark a number of the graves so that a lot of them here at the Ridges now do have gravestones. I've done a lot of genealogy, and the most peaceful places I've ever been have been the graveyards that I have visited. This lady says, what do you know about the Ridges? Enough to know that I am scared and that I will probably never ever set foot up there. There's like ghosts roaming around in there and the trace of a dead woman. This is the reputation that so many students have about the Ridges. For 20 years or so, it has been the place where a lot of offices actually are for Ohio University. And Lynn Hall, where the Kennedy Museum of Art is, Fine Arts, and who was the father of Maya Lynn, the architect who, as a college junior, won the competition to design the Vietnam War Memorial. So here's an interesting connection that Ohio University has with Washington, D.C. And now we're going to move along and see the Grand Hall and go into particularly the museum students exhibit that was put up last spring. This is the Grand Hall at the Ridges Lynn Hall, the Kennedy Museum. Art quilts on display, actually an urban garden in San Francisco. These quilts were done as a commemoration of the 25th anniversary of this group, but all the quilts that I've seen here are by women. The Studio Art Quilt Associates. There's a book that shows all these quilts that's available for purchase for $20. And this one, as you can see, is windmills. And actually the artist was not too keen on it because it has spoiled her beautiful view out in Montana. But she knows that it's important that we have electric power. And it's by, I believe, by an Israeli quilter, art quilter, but it doesn't look much like what I would think of the Dead Sea. But who knows? It's beautifully colorful. This is the exhibit done by the second museum student group that was put up in the spring of 2015. And this is the Team Big Idea, which was actually called Turning Tides, and it's about how external events can change internal things. All of the exhibit items came from museums or libraries in our area, or from biological courses. And this particular one is from one of those biology courses. It shows an elephant foot, how evolution has changed the foot. These are actually like toes into the big stumpy feet of the elephant. Here is an interesting video. Mountain gorillas, there they go. And these guys have had to get used to the fact that they are being viewed by a lot of people who come to view them. What sort of external influences can there be for these fellas? But right next to it there's a map which shows where the mountain gorillas are found in Central Africa. So there's not really an interaction, but imagine what it must be to be, running around as a gorilla in the jungle, and these people come and just look at you. External influences. This is a paper wedding dress made of a newspaper from India. It's actually Hindi, and it is a piece of art. I mean, it was never meant to be worn. This artist was influenced by Emily Dickinson, so I understand that some of the things that are written on the newspaper are from Emily Dickinson. Acquired by Edwin Kennedy. You notice that it has coral and turquoise on a Timex watch that was done by a Navajo silversmith. It's a ledger, and up at the top you see evidences of fire. It looks like fire on the page. This is an art book which is part of a collection at Alden Library. This commemorates the Triangle Fire of 1911, where 146 women died because the fire escape collapsed, the doors were locked. They had a choice of burning to death or jumping from the 6th or 7th floor. It changed laws to make sure the doors were not locked and that there were fire escapes. And that was in 1911. This is a home shocking machine. It is from the Athens County Museum. Medical electricity at home, electroshock kit. Here's Roebuck catalog. Shock yourself at home. It can help a variety of ailments, at least that's what Sears thought. People apparently bought them and tried them to see if they would help them out. You see it has a symbol with a little eye. It's a point of view kind of thing. What difference does a point of view make? A place in Benton County. Here we are looking at televisions. Televisions are looking back at us. None of them is actually working. This is a female hyena. It looks like she has a male projection there, but that isn't. That is not a penis. That is a labia, and according to the information here, the female hyenas had a lot of testosterone. They were dominant over the male hyenas. And this is a skull of one of these hyenas. 1934 French newspaper, because it was from Vietnam originally. That's on one side. Formed the back point for this print, I guess it is. Anyway, this is called The King in Hell, and it was done by a Yao, who was a part of a Chinese group which went into Vietnam. So your point of view is different if you see the 1934 paper on one side, and on this side a traditional lithograph, Kennedy collection. This is a wall hanging with a lot of beautiful butterflies, right? But what is the point of view? I mean, we think of butterflies as lovely things that fly around and so forth, and beautiful and delicate and what all. But actually what it says over here is that the traditional Navajo viewpoint is quite different, of incest problems in families. I didn't even realize that till I read it very closely, and I just said, oh, what a beautiful hanging, you know, because I have the viewpoint of people who think of the butterflies that way. But apparently down in Navajo land, they have a different viewpoint of butterflies. This is actually two books. This one is a modern printing of Mary Wollstonecraft's 1792 book, A Vindication of the Rights of Women. probably the first well-known feminist book ever published. Those old-fashioned S's, you know, that looked like F's, these 2 pages are absolutely full of S's and double S's, which look more like modern-day F's, because this is the original version published in 1792. Word, or the next word that's going to be on the next page, which is something we don't have anymore, but which they had back in Mary Wollstonecraft's day. They look very similar, but they are not evolutionarily related. They are from different animals, of course. This is a modern animal. It's a modern ostrich foot. And this is from a dinosaur that lived 70 million years ago. Fancy house, they're all dressed up in their best, and the photographer took them, but they live in Burlington, Ohio. So again, you know, what is your point of view? You wouldn't probably think of them as Appalachian people, but they are. It has a symbol with a flame on it. But you notice that it's both light and dark. So light means casting shadows. Some things are not what they seem, and some things that you might think are good are really not that good in a sense. And as an example, they have the miner's hat with the carbide lamp, because the carbide lamp was necessary, you know, for the coal miners to get out the coal. But it was quite dangerous because it had an open flame. Often there were explosive gases down in the mines. This is a sort of a shadow. It's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. This was an idea from the 1930s, I think. If people had mental health problems, maybe if put one of these through an eye and into the brain and sort of wiggle it around, that you would help the person. Nowadays we know that was a very bad idea, but that was an idea, that was a scientific idea of its time. Century when phrenology was popular, and that was this whole idea that you could tell about people by the shape of their head. They have bumps here, or did they have, like me, a high forehead? Did they have a low forehead? Bumps in different places. It was thought you could tell something about character by the bumps on people's heads. And that was a popular idea in psychology. Alden Library Archives, just a page of the book, but this particular page is interesting because it talks about Halloween. Here we have this time when people come and fill Court Street with their costumes and so on. And a scary time when you think of hauntings. Halloween itself is All Saints' Day because Hallow were saints, another name for saints back in the 15th century. Halloween, saints and ghosts. Saints and ghosts and terrible spirits roaming around on Halloween. It's obviously changed its way of looking at things. It's casting a shadow, the good and the bad. Cigarettes from the 1952s. This was an ad for Kent cigarettes, you know. Makes the taste of a cigarette mild. And here's a guy saying, you know, I'm a smart guy. I'm now smoking cigarettes that have filters, and this is going to be more healthy and so on, because it was about that time that they were really starting to say, you know, lung cancer comes from smoking, you shouldn't do it. Well, what they've later discovered is that the filters are made with asbestos. And asbestos is a very bad sort of thing. Nowadays, they don't use asbestos. In fact, they take asbestos out of buildings because it has been shown to be carcinogenic, okay? Say Nazi flag. You see all the names on it. It was obviously captured by American soldiers who put their autographs on it. And over here it says Ralph E. Cade, Route 2, Athens, Ohio. So this fellow took the flag home, gave it to the museum here. It has the swastika, of course, on it. The swastika was originally a positive symbol, ancient symbol, used in India, and a very good thing. But then the Nazi party in Germany under Hitler adopted the swastika and put it on the Nazi flag. And of course now we associate it with terrible things that were done by Hitler during the Holocaust. So it's casting a shadow, isn't it? Cornelius Ryan collection at Alden Library. Cornelius Ryan was a World War II reporter, quite a young man at the time. He was in his 20s. But among his friends were Walter Cronkite and also John Wilhelm of the Ohio University College of Journalism, was the dean there for a number of years. So the Cornelius Ryan collection was given by his widow to Ohio University. And among these items, and the weight of worth, the reason for the weight of worth is that the letter explains that this kind of strange object up there, kind of white thing, it says Hitler stood here, allegedly collected by Walter Cronkite from a bathroom that was used at one time by Hitler in Poland, I believe it was, the Wolf's Lair. He sent this to his good buddy Cornelius Ryan as a birthday present in 1970, long after the end of World War II, when he had been a young reporter too, like John Wilhelm and Cornelius Ryan. Well, the letter explains where he got it, and Walter Cronkite was a famous reporter on TV for years and years. That's the weight of worth. What makes this thing valuable? Well, Hitler's associated with it, and Walter Cronkite and Cornelius Ryan. I think this is the most beautiful dress I have ever seen, really. And it was only worn twice. Once in 1920 and once in 1956 by a mother and her daughter on their wedding days. It was given to the museum by Linda Harris, who is a person I knew. Her son, David, was a good friend of my son, David, when they were both in high school. This was something that Linda Harris had worn on her wedding day, till I read the fine print. And you see what a gorgeous train it has. It's golden. They explained something about wedding dresses. Blue was a traditional color, I suppose, for the loyalty virtue that it symbolizes. But after Queen Victoria in 1840 was married in a beautiful white gown with orange blossoms, that became the sort of the standard weight of worth that Queen Victoria gave to the white wedding gown. And even today there are many, many young women who insist on a nice white symbol of purity for their wedding, even if they have been living with their spouse for a number of years before they actually tied the legal knot. That has something to do with the weight of worth, I think. Worn at graduation time and worn in academic processions by professors. This mortarboard is the mortarboard of President Vernon Alden. Was given to the library. There are thousands and thousands of mortarboards, but this is the one that was actually worn by President Vernon Alden when he was president at Ohio University between 1962 and 1968. There's a script, a company script from a coal mine company. Tags or coal mine involved also. Made sure that folks used the company store. Maybe at times they paid more there than they would have paid elsewhere if they'd had a chance. Who knows? Clay's Oldenburg. It's actually by a well-known U.S. Artist. It shows some interesting buildings. There's one that says Knee Diner. These were places that were actually in Los Angeles at one time, I think, and he sketched them. There's the Nose Diner, that blue one there. And then there are a couple of, I think those were, well, they were buildings, but you notice that they look like a woman's skirt and a man's pair of pants there. This is a skate. That was actually a building. And up at the top, maybe it wasn't a building, but again, you see it looks like a woman on her knee. Up at the top, there's an oil derrick that's been hidden to look like an ice cream cone, and then there are various ice cream cones down in the same picture. A photographer, but he's not well known. Does that make a difference in the way his art is viewed? The weight of worth. Hitler and Cronkite, mortarboard by a president of the university, makes something worthwhile. If we know that Claes Oldenburg is a well-known artist, does that make a difference in how we view the objects that we just saw there? The well-known modern artist, Rauschenberg. This is a valuable print because, of course, it's done by a valuable, well-known artist. one is associated with International Planned Parenthood. She's dreaming of something, of what maybe she could do if she didn't have to have babies. You know? Over here it says choice, plan, and here she's making a nice garden. Celebration of turtles. Pot of water, hot with the sun's reflection. And down here is the opposite. This is your alternative. Go and get sticks. Bring them home on your head. But the central one there shows them cooking with the sun, with aluminum. The importance of fire in clearing out forests. I think this is the forest with all the sticks and brush and fallen trees, and this is after the fire when this stuff on the ground is gone and trees can grow and new lower types of plants. That is, if the trees themselves don't actually burn down. Let's look at the ones upstairs too.